Hi, and welcome to your Urban Connection. Remember, this is the channel that is often imitated, but is never duplicated. Now, on this show, I'm going to talk about what will be a familiar topic to some of you and maybe new to some of the others of you. However, it is a topic that we have to discuss because of the fact that it has the potential, and I emphasize that word, the potential to affect so many of you, in particular, you African Americans in the state of Kansas. And the topic today is none other than the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. Now, many of you will remember about 1 month ago, I did a show informing you that the Kansas African American Affairs Commission was under an legislative audit. That audit was estimated to take 100 hours. That audit has been completed. And from what I'm hearing, the audit has borne out what I have been telling you people ever since the first day, and even before that, that Governor Laura Kelly took office and took control of this organization. And that is that they're totally ineffective, they're underfunded, they're understaffed, and they underperform in almost every category of the state statute 74-9905, which spells out in detail the duties and responsibilities of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. Now, we're going to deal with all of that, okay? We're going to deal with all of that in this program. I'm going to lay out for you, because it's very important that I do this, because, as I've said many times, 80% of the African Americans in the state of Kansas has never heard of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. They don't know they exist. And even those that have heard of it can't tell you anything that they do to impact over 165,000 African Americans in the state of Kansas. So I'm going to start out reading from this brochure that I just showed you, ladies and gentlemen, which details what the Kansas African American Affairs Commission is supposed to be about. Now, don't you all laugh as I read this, okay? All right. In the mission statement, says the Kansas African American Affairs Commission will address issues of equity for African Americans and serve as a conduit for programs, legislation, grants, research, and policy advice for state and local organizations in addressing concerns that are unique to the African American community in the state of Kansas. Now, if you think that you have not seen or are not aware of any of this that I just read being done, you're not alone, okay? You're absolutely not alone. And this will be borne out by the audit, and the audit will go before the legislative post-audit committee in probably a couple of months. And they will then take it upon themselves to determine whether or not this Kansas African American Affairs Commission deserves or warrants a continuation as a governor's, the Department of the Governor's office. Because let's face it, if they're having no impact and they're not following the state statute, which, by the way, is a law, all right, then what good are they doing? And they don't issue any reports and have not for 14 years issued any reports on their activities, their accomplishments, which they don't have any. That's basically why they don't issue a report, but nothing to do with what services they perform, how they spend the money, where they spend the money. Nobody knows that. The governor does not know that. The chief of staff does not know that. The legislative body does not know that. And the public, the tax-paying public, does not have any idea of what this group does. And it's very simple. So let me just say this. To confirm what I have been telling you all about the ineffectiveness, I want to refer to the July 7th meeting minutes, and that's July the 7th, 2023. So less than a month ago. And I think after I read this to you, read these minutes, you will understand why I have been saying for a number of years that this group is missing in action in the state of Kansas. It's why I have been saying that the Kansas African American Affairs Commission is not working in Kansas for African Americans. Okay, so let's get on with this. So the minutes of the July the 7th meeting started off with Chairman Mark McCormick called the meeting to order at 1:32 p.m. The commissioners present, there are 7 commissioners, by the way. They're comprised of, at this point, 4 Democrats and 3 Republicans. Now, 6 of the commissioners were present for this meeting. 1 was absent. The chairman's opening comments. Chair Mark McCormick commented that he would like to see the chair position rotate throughout the commission so that everyone will get the opportunity to have the responsibility. Well, I've got news for Chairman McCormick. The bylaws does not allow for that, sir. And I have here a copy of the bylaws. The bylaws state in regard to officers' nominations and duties. So that means that officers have to be elected. They cannot be appointed, sir. The officers of the commission, the CAC, shall be a chairperson and a vice chairperson / secretary. Those only 2 officers. These officers shall perform the duties prescribed by these bylaws and the parliamentary authority adopted by CAC. So there you are. They cannot be appointed. They have to be elected. All right? Yeah, so let's move on. You see, it's interesting. I find it very interesting that these people, and you're going to find out more as I go along, these people who serve, or I won't say serve, who sit on this commission have not read, and Mr. McCormick has been there for, well, I think went on his 2nd year, and there are some members there that have been there since 2015. I find it interesting, they've never read or they're not aware of the bylaws for the organization. Now, also, you're going to find out as I read here that these people have never read, and if they haven't read it, they certainly haven't followed it, but they've never even read the state statute. So they don't even know what their duties and responsibilities are. And if you don't know what they are, you cannot carry them out. And that is why we have an ineffective, and have had an ineffective, African American Affairs Commission every day of the Kelly administration. Now let me read on. Director No informed the commission that the audit is complete, but will remain confidential until it's public sometime in the fall. It is unclear when that will happen, but she will inform the commission as soon as she knows. and I will inform you. Okay? The audit did prompt her to seek input from the governor's office legal counsel concerning the responsibilities of the commission. Now, did you hear what I said? It was the audit that prompted the executive director of an organization that she's been executive director for over 2 years, but did not know what her duties and responsibilities as an executive director are. Now, if she doesn't know what they are, she could not follow them. That is why this commission is ineffective. You've got an executive director and 7 adult commissioners, and none of them have any idea what's in the bylaws. They have no idea what is in the state statute, which is like a job description, but it's a state statute, which means this is a state law, and you're not following the law. And that's why you're not providing any benefits or services to 165,000 African Americans in the state of Kansas. You're running by the seat of the pants, ladies and gentlemen. You're doing trial and error, and 99% of it is errors. Let me go on further. Once the statute, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, now she says in light of the audit, okay, prompting her to seek the governor's legal counsel, which has been there every single day that she's been there. And I have to tell you, this flies in the face of what she has said personally to me. Because she has said to me before that she has spoken with this office and they told her she didn't have to do what is in the statute. As a matter of fact, she didn't only say it to me, she said it publicly at a so-called town hall meeting in Wichita in September of 2022. And those of you that were there heard her say from the podium that the state statute is not a law and she doesn't have to abide by it. But now, all of a sudden, when we have an audit, and the audit calls into question whether or not you were following the state statute, and the answer was no, all of a sudden you're calling the governor's legal counsel to find out about your responsibilities and duties as an executive director in the commission. And then, now listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. Once the statute and the bylaws were read, the discussion surrounded the feasibility of doing everything listed on the statute. The discussion surrounded the feasibility of doing everything listed in the statute. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this statute was issued in 1997. It's been feasible to perform all of these duties since 1997. But all of a sudden, you're questioning the feasibility of carrying out the statute and the state law as executive director of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission? So you're telling me that you've operated in that position for over 2 years without knowing what was in the statute. So what have you been doing all of this time? It's little wonder that no services, no products, no impact has been made on 165,000 African Americans. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I've been telling you that there's only one person that benefits from the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. And that one person is Stacey Nell. And how does she benefit? Well, as executive director, she is paid $75,000 to perform duties that she's not performing. Now, let me just tell you, she is not qualified to perform those duties for two reasons. And those duties, I'm going to refer, now I'm not going to, it's not me, so I'm going to refer to State Statute 74-9904, which clearly states the executive director shall be qualified by education and experience to assume the responsibilities of such office. That's straight out of 74-9904, the state statute, ladies and gentlemen. That is not me. Okay? Stacey Nail does not qualify by education nor by work experience. Stacey Nail was a stay-at-home mom when she was handpicked by Governor Laura Kelly, and I might add, her chief of staff, Will Lawrence, but Lawrence Kelly is the only one who can make the appointment. Laura Kelly handpicked this woman as a political appointee, knowing full well she didn't meet the requirements by education and by work experience. Secondly, Laura Kelly violated her own state statute. And let me tell you how. The advisory commission may appoint, not the governor, may appoint, subject to the approval of the governor, an executive director who shall be qualified by education and experience. The governor refused to allow the commissioners to be involved at all in the process of selecting who would be the most qualified by education and experience to lead the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. Now, not only that, the position, once it was open, was supposed to be advertised and made available for any interested party that wanted to apply for this position in a manner that the commissioners could conduct interviews based on the resumes that they had received expressing an interest in the position. By conducting interviews, you find out through education, through work experience, who is best suited to take that position. By doing interviews, you find out if that person has a vision that will fit in with a concept and the mission statement set forth by the governor. And any other process you do is unfair, not only to the commissioners, but it's totally unfair to every African American in the state of Kansas. Because the governor has picked for you who she thinks is the best person to serve your needs and to lead an organization that was established clearly to be effective regarding the issues and concerns of African Americans. Now, so I have to ask two questions. How much experience does Laura Kelly have in working with, learning about, knowing about the issues and concerns of African Americans? Also, the same goes for Chief of Staff Will Lawrence. How much experience does he have in dealing with issues of concern in the areas of education, employment, welfare, recreation, and so on in the Black community? And then I have to ask the third question. The same question applies to Stacy Nail. All right. So the governor made a fool out of us and the commissioners by making a political appointment. And then for over 2 years, never ever one time pointing out to the executive director nor the commission what their duties and responsibilities are. So we're sitting there for over 2 years, actually for over 5 years with Governor Kelly's administration, with 8 people, an executive director and 7 commissioners, and none of them knowing what the hell they're supposed to be doing. And as a result, they're doing nothing. Okay, now let me continue on with the minutes of this meeting. But this just goes to show these people are acknowledging that they have no idea what they're supposed to be doing all of this time. And like I said, some of them have been there since 2015. That's 8 years. And yet we've received no benefits as African Americans. Okay. In regard to the audit, the chairman, McCormick, did raise the question of fairness and due process to have the opportunity to respond to the audit. Well, my impression, my interpretation was the fact that you have been contacted and you have an opportunity to voice your position, to answer questions. All of you as commissioners had that opportunity, as did the executive director. And if you didn't make a case during that time, you don't have a case to make, okay? All right, now, the commission conducted officer elections. Now, this was, I want you to remember, this was July the 7th. Their fiscal year and I want you to understand this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to read from the bylaws. Because here again, they violated not only the state statute, they violated the bylaws. The bylaws here say that during the last regular meeting of the fiscal year, which would have been in June, any appointed commission member of CAC may nominate candidates and hold elections. Okay? The officers shall be elected to serve for a term of 1 year or until their successors are elected, and their term of office shall begin upon election to the office. So they were supposed to have elections before June the 31st because the fiscal year ended then. Now, if they didn't have a meeting in June, they would have had elections. They should have had elections in May, but they had a meeting in June. But you see, they don't even know what's in the bylaws. They don't know how to follow instructions. They don't know what the instructions are. The question has to be asked, what in the hell are they doing? Why are they there? This is ridiculous. Now, so let's move on further. I'll show you something else here. Then Commissioner Talia Penn pointed out that the board does not have a treasurer. Ms. Penn, your bylaws do not call for the election of a treasurer. As I read to you earlier, and I will read to you again, the office of the commission shall be a chairperson and a vice chairperson who also performs duties as secretary. Says nothing in there about an officer being a treasurer. So there's no provision in your bylaws for a treasurer, ma'am. I'm sorry to inform you. But you see, if you guys would take an opportunity to read and find out what the hell you're supposed to be doing, you all would know this. I mean, my God, this is not rocket science. This is why you're considered the worst African American Affairs Commission in the country, bar none. And then we talk about committees. So, in answer to Talia Penn about not having a treasurer, Stacey Nell said this. She suggested for the commission to establish a finance or budget committee and for Talia Penn to chair that committee. Now, I want to tell you something. You only have a budget as a commission of $250,000 to run a statewide organization with one employee. You don't need a budget committee, okay, for that $250,000. Now, what I would suggest you do is tell the governor that you need not a treasurer, but you need some money. The governor is sitting on a surplus of over $2 million right now as we speak. And you all are afraid to ask for a budget increase. You are afraid to ask for enough money to hire some additional staff so that you can move forward with the issues and the laws that are stated, the duties and responsibilities that are stated by 74-9905. You know, it's asinine. What you guys are doing is you guys are driving the African American Affairs Commission of Kansas into the ground. It's like an airplane doing a nosedive when it's crashing, and you have no ability to correct this course. And so basically, rather than admit that you are not qualified to do this job, you would rather take the plane down, nosediving into the ground, killing all of the occupants on the plane. Because that's exactly what you're doing. That's the course you're on. You're on a collision course right now with a disaster. Because your ego won't allow you to admit that you don't have the educational background, nor the work experience, nor a vision for how to take the Kansas African American Affairs Commission from point A to point B. After 2 years and several months now, you still have no vision for the African American Affairs Commission. You are still having no impact on the 165,000 African Americans in the state of Kansas. Now, you want to brag about your lunch and learn? You've done 55 of them so far. And on a single one of those 55, have you discussed what the Kansas African American Affairs Commission has done, is doing, or intends to do? So how is that having an impact on these African Americans in the state of Kansas? Your lunch and learns have not attracted, out of 55, you don't have a single one of them that's attracted 100 views. You don't have a single one that's attracted 75 viewers. Most have attracted less than 15 viewers per episode. That is not making an impact on 165,000 African Americans in the state of Kansas. So this audit, clearly by the minutes of July the 7th, shows me that you do not have, and when I say you, I mean the whole group, you do not have a grasp on how to effectively carry out the duties and responsibilities that are laid out by State Statute 74-9905. Because of the fact of the matter is you have not done it one day of the Kelly administration. And then you talk about, lastly, you talk about the fact that you want the commission the potential of having at least a yearly meeting with the governor. But yet you're supposed to be a liaison between the Black community and the governor. And by your own admission here, you don't even meet with the governor once a year. And you confirm what I've said, that the governor and the chief of staff and nobody in the administration and nobody in the public has received a single report from you designating what your activities, your accomplishments, or any of that since Governor Kelly took office. She's not received one single written report. And yet she has the audacity to open her mouth and lie and say the African American Affairs Commission does good work. Oh, you know, I laugh, but this is really not a laughing matter, because I feel really sorry for the way the African American community has been taken for a ride by this governor, who has shown that she doesn't give a you-know-what about the lifestyles or enhancing the lifestyles of not one African American in the state of Kansas. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you something. I've said this so many times. Your willingness to be and remain silent on this commission is a show of acceptance. It shows that you're willing to accept an ineffective, underperforming, understaffed, underfunded African American Affairs Commission that has no impact on your day-to-day livelihood. Okay, there you have it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now let me just say this. If any member of the governor's staff, including the governor herself, or any member of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission has any problem with anything I've said there today, don't talk about me behind my back and tell lies, because you just might set yourself up for a defamation lawsuit, because everything that I've said can and has been proven. So if you want to spread lies and say things that you know are untrue, and you know who I'm talking about, I don't want to call your name, I don't want to call you out, but if I have to, I will. Just keep it up. You've been warned. I'm out.